We have a blind spot in our human thinking. This blind spot is so blind, we don't even see it when it is pointed out to us. We become deaf when it comes to hearing about it, and we become mute when it comes to talking about it. Both science and religion are subject to this blind spot, though they each are blind to it from a different direction. This blind spot and our inability to even recognize that it is there blocks all human progress and explains why human civilization, human culture, is as it is, and has been as it still is throughout human history, despite the superficial advancements we make in technology. This blind spot that we humans just don't seem to know how to conceptualize is the non-physical. Non-physical phenomena are the very simplest forms of phenomena in existence. And this shouldn't come as a surprise because non-physical phenomena are not made out of anything. That is why they are non-physical, after all. What may come as a surprise to you is that they even exist at all, and that human existence of any kind, would be completely impossible without them. There is no scientist in the world that will tell you about this. And this is why our progress as a species, despite our technological advancements in engineering, has been at a halt for the longest time. You have noticed, have you not, that despite our technology advancing at a rapid rate, we still suffer as a species from such things as war, as politics, as having different sections of the population be conspicuously wealthy or dying of poverty at the very same time, and so on and so on. You have noticed this. We have not progressed for a long time. There is constant change. There is always constant change. But change does not necessarily equate to progress. Our movies and stories today may be about different and seemingly new conflicts between different and seemingly new characters, but they are still all about conflict. This is the point we have not yet progressed beyond. We are still in conflict with each other. We are still in conflict with ourselves. And we will not be able to progress beyond this until this blind spot we have is resolved. But hold on a moment. How on earth is anything that is not physical going to have such a profound impact on us? How is it going to have any effect on us at all? And there it is. There's the blind spot right there. Do you feel on the verge of stopping listening to this? There's the blind spot. We don't want to know. I will explain, and it's very simple. Simple enough for almost anybody to understand. But it does run counter to all of our cultural programming. And this will make it seem like sacrilege to the religious and the scientifically minded alike, and very possibly to you. This is what makes it such a powerful blind spot. This is what has enabled it to block all of humanity's progress since we can remember. Okay, so I will explain. When scientific reasoning made its appearance in human history, that was a mark of some progress for us. It was the indication that we were ready to introduce some logic into our worldview, alongside the more intuitive and mystical ways of thinking that resulted in our religions. Notice I say here that logic came in alongside our more intuitive ways of thinking, rather than as a replacement for our more intuitive ways of thinking. Part of our cultural blind spot is that we believe we must make a choice between logic and intuition, as if the two cancel each other out, as if it can only be one or the other. But a religious person can think logically, and a scientist or mathematician can follow their intuition. Progress is best made when intuition and logic are integrated with each other, rather than being seen as contradicting each other. So the appearance of scientific thinking was a mark of progress for us, in that it was a recognition of the value of logic, which is a true recognition. And our progress pretty much halted there. It was good for us that we now had some proponents of logic in the mix, so to speak. But we did not integrate this scientific approach with the more spiritually based ways of thinking we were so used to. We didn't know how to. We didn't integrate them. We set them against each other. One was right, or the other was, as far as we could see, because they do not allow for each other, as far as we could see. And this is true enough, as our religions and sciences currently stand. They do not allow for each other. Each religion is decidedly definitive about the story of existence they subscribe to, and the scientific approach sets empirical observation as its own gold standard. So you will have a Holy Bible that asserts a reality entirely different to that which a textbook on physics will assert. The religious are required to feel the truth and then have faith in it. while the physicist is required to observe, measure, and quantify the truth with their own eyes and measuring apparatus. Intuition versus logic, rather than intuition and logic integrated. You see, the introduction of scientific thinking in human history has brought about incredible advancements in our engineering and technology. But that is pretty much all it has brought about. Observing closely and empirically what happens when different substances are brought together and combined in different ways is a great way to improve one's engineering knowledge. But it doesn't necessarily help one to make sense of one's own existence. Doesn't necessarily help one to understand the truth of reality and just what is going on. It only helps us build larger buildings, faster cars, and more complex computers, and so on. Here is the problem. For both religion and science, here is the sacrilege for both. Neither of them has a foundation. Neither of them has a foundation. A foundation is what is required for progress, because a foundation is that which progress is built on top of. A foundation, when it comes to understanding what reality is, what existence itself is an understanding of the very simplest and most fundamental of truths, from which emerge the greater complexities of reality. The greater complexities of reality emerge from the very simplest and most fundamental of truths because they had to be made possible in the first place. There would not be great complexities in existence if there were not simpler truths that made the great complexities even possible. A foundation is a working knowledge of the most simplest of truths, and neither religion or science has this. Neither of them has this. For religion, it is old books that are as close to a foundation as religion is able to get. But old books are far, far, far too complex to count as being simple enough to count as being foundational, unless those old books actually contain the very most simplest of truths, the truths that can remain true amidst all complexity. There is no religious scripture that contains such a thing. For theoretical physics, it is empirical observation combined with mathematical models that is as close to a foundation as it is able to get. Unfortunately, modern mathematics is incorrect, and empirical observation as a gold standard specifically excludes from observation the very simplest things that need to be observed if one is to have a coherent foundation. These things being the non-physical. Let me back up what I have just said there. Firstly, on modern mathematics being incorrect, our modern mathematicians have not yet conclusively agreed amongst themselves on what the word number even means. We have imaginary numbers acting as a hack for us not being able to work out what the square roots of negative numbers are. And the reason we can't work out what the square roots of negative numbers are is because negative numbers have no bearing on reality. There is no such thing as less than nothing. Not in reality. Only in mathematical models. Mathematical models that do not represent reality. Our mathematical understanding currently is not an understanding. It is a hack, a frequently useful hack, for us not understanding. Our mathematicians are fully aware that the mathematical model they rely on has no coherently identified foundation. They are aware of this. They just don't know how to go about doing something about it. This isn't criticism from me. This is just me reporting on the truth. As for empirical observation as a gold standard of operation for physicists, it sounds like a good idea, that we should only rely on what can be reliably observed and measured and objectively quantified. But it is only a good idea when it comes to engineering. Empirical observation is a wonderful thing for engineering. But for understanding reality, not so much. And it is increasing our understanding of reality that is going to allow us to progress as a species, as a collective, at long last. The reason that empirical observation is not enough to provide physics with a foundation is because a foundation consists of the very simplest and most underlying of truths, the ones that all the more complex truths rely on to even be possible at all. And the simplest, most foundational truths are not physical. Empirical observation only observes the physical. Physics itself is only the study of the physical. Foundational to the physical is the non-physical, and physicists are not allowed to believe in the non-physical. Do you hear that? Physicists are not allowed to believe in that which is foundational to physics. Let me just say this one more time, because it is true. Physicists are not allowed to believe in that which is foundational to physics. Empirical observation forbids it. And so, the two most foundational non-physical truths are not understood and recognized as the two most foundational non-physical truths. These two truths are very simple, as foundational truth has to be. Here they are. There are 3 spatial dimensions, and one moment follows another. Neither of these two truths possess any physical attributes of their own. Neither of them are mechanisms, or constructs, or forces. Neither of them are physical in any way. They are just true, because it is utterly impossible for them not to be. And this is not allowed by our physicists. The reason it is not allowed by our physicists is because, as I say, physicists are not allowed to believe in anything that is not physical. Not allowed to observe and measure and analyze anything that is not physical. The spatial dimensions are not physical. Only that which inhabits them are. But they can be measured. The passage of time is not physical. Only that which passes through it is. But it can be measured. These two truths are foundational, non-physical truths that all expression of physicality would be impossible without. And us understanding this is actually necessary for us if we wish to progress. Because while we remain intent on the physical, and the physical alone as being the only thing that is truly real, to the point where we say that time and space can be bent this way and that, we are not understanding the simplest things about reality. We think our progression as a species must come from understanding more and more complex things. But this can only be the case after we have understood the simplest, after we have established our foundation for the first time in human history. The truth is that if we understand the highly complex before we have understood the very simple that made the complex possible in the first place, we have not understood it at all. Do you understand? Do you understand that there are 3 spatial dimensions because it is plain old impossible for there not to be, and that they're not made out of anything, and so go on forever? Do you understand this? Do you understand that it does not matter how big you get, or how small you get, or where you travel to at whatever speed? There will always be 3 spatial dimensions waiting there for you, because it's impossible that there wouldn't be. This is not difficult to understand. Do you understand it? Because if you do, you now understand reality better than any theoretical physicist. Do you understand that one moment follows another because it is impossible for one moment to not follow another. And that this truth, that one moment follows another, is not a mechanism or a physical structure of any kind. It is just a truth that can never stop being true. Do you understand this? Because if you do, you have greater foundational knowledge than any theoretical physicist at the time of me writing these words. This blind spot of ours may seem a relatively inconsequential thing to you. If that is so, then it is still your blind spot. Reality is the place where we live. And when we don't understand the simplest things about where we are, life becomes difficult for us there. And we end up with a culture like the one we currently have. There is massive misery in this world right now. And the simple truth is that there needn't be. But our culture forbids that which is true and insists on that which isn't. And we all live out the consequences of this together. This blind spot of ours will carry on being our blind spot for as long as we refuse to open our eyes to it. And we will not progress while this continues to be the case. Do you understand?